Hi, I just wanted to do another video focusing more on autistic women, late diagnosed, miscommunications and misunderstandings. I'm going to be reading it from my laptop, so it's going to be hard for me to focus on the camera and focus on the lines of writing at the same time. So please bear with me, because following a recent rant via phone recording whilst driving and getting lost, I decided to write up, what came flooding out, and then I sent all 9 voice recordings to Lucia from Child Protection Wales. Luckily, Lucia is an extremely understanding woman and doesn't mind my overspill of emotions. Sometimes most of the time, I'm getting better, by the way. I apologise even when I've got nothing to apologise for, and I do it because I believe the other person's opinion of me is the truth in that moment, before I've had a chance to process anything properly. I over-justify, overshare and explain myself so much. It's like digging myself a hole and jumping in it and burying myself. Because the more I need to feel understood and the more I need to be believed, the more overwhelmed I get to the point that I'm emotionally dysregulated, especially if the person that I'm communicating with is somebody I deeply care about. This stems from childhood trauma. It's not autism, it's a product of being invalidated constantly throughout primary school, comprehensive school, college, and all the way through adulthood because of the lack of knowledge surrounding autism and the ableist outlook from authority, which has failed children with conditions teachers don't even know anything about. It can set autistic children up to fail and grow up with absolutely no idea why they feel so worthless and lost. The environment is not suitable for children with sensory needs. If a child is constantly shut down, told to be quiet, stop moving, sit still, they learn to suppress their emotions. I need to move after feeling like an ironing board most of my life, but feeling like a live electric cable on the inside, full of anxiety, no expression, confused, lost, but trying hard not to allow these feelings out of fear of being bullied or shouted at by the teacher. We eventually begin to believe it's not okay to be ourselves. Actually, it's dangerous to be ourselves. The conditioning period has begun, living in a dream world, but robotic body, doing as she was told all the time, watching other children to see how they interact and play, but always feeling like I shouldn't be there, constantly wondering why I don't enjoy like they did. My natural quirky ways were disapproved of, and my happy-go-lucky bouncy walk turned into a nervous shuffle. In school, my nickname was Bob Along, or Mr. Soft, or Zebedee. I think it's funny now. At the time, I wasn't amused. Throughout comprehensive school, but because I thought there was something seriously wrong with me, I suppressed all my feelings in to blend in after the first few days of starting school. But when you get a nickname, it never dies. At least it wasn't a bad one. Can you imagine holding all that emotion in for 12 years? By the time you get used to the same children in the same class for 7 years, you've moved to comprehensive school and have to learn how to navigate from scratch again. From the safety of knowing what to expect at primary school, at last, to an awful, traumatic few years at comprehensive school. When we suppress our emotions, we can shut down and go non-verbal. Stare off into space, trying any technique to try and not leak out how we truly feel. We can be easily manipulated in this state. It's a shame that in school they didn't teach us how to breathe properly, how to recognise our emotions and to find a reason for them. Instead, we have to mask in order to protect ourselves, to not get scorned, ridiculed, mocked and bullied. Being constantly invalidated for being yourself is so damaging that a very high percentage of late diagnosed women like myself have turned to alcohol and drugs as teenagers in hope to numb our emotions so that we can blend in with our peers. This was counterproductive. All that did was unleash 14 years of suppression, not a pretty sight. Party life was like medicine, the life and soul of the party, the fool, the clown. If someone laughed and told me to do something, I would do it. no regard for consequences, because I made that person laugh. That was acceptable. I made my family laugh by doing impressions of the whole family. It was my responsibility to make sure everyone was happy at all times, I thought. That's a big responsibility, isn't it? That must be my vocation in life, I thought. Masking became what I needed to do in order to feel accepted, validated and safe. Was I really safe though? How can children be safe when they may be too afraid to move and speak? Most late diagnosed autistic women have suffered trauma as a direct result of the damage caused at school. If you believe as a child that how you move and what you say is unacceptable, then you will learn fast of ways to go unnoticed or blend in. This behaviour is like survival mode or fight and flight. Masking becomes normal for you, constantly trying to work out ways to socialise by being somebody else. Someone who doesn't talk much, but talks enough. I learned to do as the bullies told me because it made them laugh. They accepted me. I never wanted to do what they asked, but it was a constant, repetitive, antagonising coercion, which after being in a non-verbal state for so long with no escape to let out these emotions, I'd explode or snap. Then robotically do exactly what the bully told me to do, just to make them stop. The deep shame and guilt would follow because I felt controlled and didn't understand why I existed. My confidence and self-worth was non-existent. My new college friends were an upgrade, although my 18 to 30s holidays could paint a very different picture. Wish I hadn't watched Tenerife Uncovered. There are a lot of things I wish I hadn't watched on TV. Autistic children may copy or play out what they have seen, even more so than a non-autistic child. If children were allowed to be themselves, these explosions from repressed emotions wouldn't happen. So it's not that being autistic is the problem. It's the lack of support, suitable environment, and lack of educated, understanding role models. As Adele said from Child Protection Wales, if a child is stimming in class, why are the teachers not educating the children on autism, ADHD, and other conditions, and why isn't individuality encouraged and nurtured? If you are an undiagnosed child and teachers are not fully trained in what signs to look out for, especially when it comes to children who mask and hide their true nature, then you're going to grow up suffering continuous invalidation of your entire existence. You will allow yourself to be submissive and await orders of what to do next, where to turn, what to choose, what is acceptable to say. Unfortunately, it's rarely the nice people who like to give orders. After years of learning how to exist and feel accepted for the character you play, you learn to trust the wrong people. You allow yourself to be a square peg being hammered into a round hole. It happens so much that you end up putting enormous pressure on yourself to fit into that damn round hole, even though deep down you know there's no point, because it is impossible. But because you are so determined to fit in, you will continue to try like it's the most important thing in your world. This inevitably takes its toll. You will crash and you will burn. You may self-medicate. You may try suspecting... What's that? Hang on. You may try numerous unhealthy ways to escape your miserable existence and without anyone suspecting a thing. How would anyone know how deep down you wished you were dead when you were constantly being the person who wanted to make everyone laugh? If children don't know that all brains think differently, they may compare themselves to others and feel inadequate all their lives. Autistic children especially. It's not the autism that is the problem. Relationships are really difficult for me because of this conditioning. My vulnerability attracted abusive partners and I believed what they thought I was. If you don't know you are autistic, then you may internalize everything instead of knowing and feeling comforted by the fact that there are simple solutions, simple reasons why you feel the way you do. These simple reasons have simple solutions, which do not require a child to feel constantly worthless. That is the danger of being in an unsuitable environment with too much stimuli. When you feel worthless, you get noticed by narcissistic people who like to use you or purposely play mind games with you. Only that I didn't know it was a game until I lost. It happened so often that it felt normal to be confused and fearful of speaking. I was mostly in a state of alexithymia. I was unable to identify my emotions, let alone regulate them. Most of the time when suffering alexithymia, I'd go non-verbal and freeze like a fawn. It is so important for children to understand their emotions and to talk about them so that they can find comfort in unity. Free play is so important so they can discover new ways of expressing themselves freely without judgment and fear of being bullied. But to be honest, school feels more and more like a dangerous place to be as time goes on. If a child is not encouraged to be themselves, then how are they going to be able to recognise when abusers are abusing them? How will they know that the negative feelings they are feeling are acceptable to express? If you've been shut down constantly for speaking up, how will they know to run when in the face of danger, when their natural ways of moving have been scorned upon? Taking all this into account as an adult, this conditioning is still prevalent, and only recently, following a misunderstanding, which thankfully didn't result in a loss of friendship, has enabled me to process and express this to you with no shame. The fact that I wasn't ousted, mocked, ignored, or shouted at for this misunderstanding has enabled me to express this information to you. It has helped me to trust in some people again. It has made me unafraid to be real. I have finally learned at the age of 41 that it is okay to be open about my securities, my triggers, and my vulnerabilities. After a diagnosis, I understand that the importance of needing to feel emotionally safe at all times is critical. I have finally had validation of my entire existence. I finally have permission to be myself, to move freely, to speak up when need be. What a relief. After a grieving process, looking back at my life, thinking of the ways I could have done things differently with confidence and self-esteem, I learned to accept my mistakes and be a lot more gentle with myself. I am discovering new ways of regulating my emotions as they arise, rather than holding them in and falling apart at the worst possible times, which results in more shame and more isolation. Without knowing I was autistic, I'd take full responsibility for any mistakes made, even if they were not my fault. I'd believe the accuser and ignore the deep nagging intuition coming from inside me, and instead say or do something to agree with the abuser out of fear of angering them further. Even a slight change in tone of voice would set my heart racing into a panic and close up my throat chakra even more. So it is not a wonder that after 37 years of suppression, I am now speaking up and slowly starting to value myself, and that I believe it is all thanks to my diagnosis. I never believed in labels, but now I see the importance of having one for my safety and my self-identity. I had a panic recently and it escalated in my oversharing of emotions. The reason for the overspill was the fear of being misunderstood by the person I thought understood me the most. The fear of being misunderstood comes from continuous invalidation, which has really affected my ability to trust new people and sometimes causes me to distrust people I already know. Trust is essential for connection and to thrive in life. Without some element of trust, it is impossible to finish any endeavour I start. My constant thirst for truth has made me curious about new people who show an interest in me. I wonder what their intentions are, and maybe soon begin to feel safe with them. I'm half expecting them to lose their temper with me. If I haven't heard from them in a while, I wonder if they are still the loving person they were a few days, weeks or months ago. If there is no regular, open, honest communication, and I didn't really understand their last message, my conditioned mind starts to play tricks on me, and I could start to panic that I've maybe trusted the wrong person. This results in a complete shutdown of emotions or into an overspill of unnecessary communications, justifying and apologising constantly. This has only recently come into my awareness in the most compassionate way. I am very grateful to have these realizations, as it is apparent that the reason I overshare is because I need more information on the person I'm sharing to, or actually think they like this information, as it would help them understand me more because of my need to be understood. But it's not the case. Just because I need to see the person's face, see their eyes, feel their energy, observe body language and facial expressions, hear their tone, to fully trust where they're coming from, doesn't mean that they need that from me too. I have discovered that most people don't like voice messages because they are busy and stressed and literally unable to listen, which is fair enough. But for me, after sitting in silence for days and assuming that other people's needs are the same as mine, I prefer to do voice recordings so as to not make any mistakes within the written text. So to not be misunderstood, because that is one of the most frustrating things for me. It has been an ongoing issue from as young as I can remember. Not being believed as a child when I disclosed abuse to an adult invalidated me even more. You slowly learn to think that it's what you deserve. When trying to communicate effectively with people who make typos, lack context and continuity, and who don't state their intentions because I meant to know exactly where the person is coming from all the time, I more often or not get the panic and anxiety in my body which stems from past trauma. It is deeply rooted and causes a lot of internal conflict. I miss out on opportunities because of this, as it is easier to not ask questions and stay home than to risk feeling worse by asking for clarity. In the past, asking for clarity usually resulted in being gaslit even further. Communication needs to be crystal clear for me. I do not know how to read between lines. I say exactly what I mean. I don't know when people are being passive-aggressive or sarcastic through a text. I think about it and try to understand the many things it could mean, but still can't bring myself to ask for clarity. I can only respect myself by removing myself from the situation if it makes me feel emotionally unsafe. Sometimes cutting ties completely is the only way to diffuse these uncomfortable feelings, which is a shame. If only I had the energy to explain how my brain works to people, but to risk not being believed will automatically take me back to that moment as a child when I disclosed abuse to an adult and was dismissed. There's always been a flaw in the system, especially in the education system. Autism is not the problem, it's the lack of understanding of every unique individual's needs. If children were taught to communicate in their preferred ways, then they wouldn't struggle so much as adults. There would be no shame in being themselves, and as a result would lead to a lower amount of autistic adults being diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress. The lack of awareness and knowledge of autism is damaging to autistic children. Autistic women are more likely to be diagnosed with BPD or bipolar because by the time they realise they need external medical help, they are already deeply traumatised by the way society has expected them to function in a neurotypical world. So autism gets dismissed because most doctors have outdated knowledge, which totally dismisses how autism presents itself in girls or in children with a natural submissive nature. The media also does not portray autism in its true light. As the autistic community would say, if you want to learn about autism, then listen to autistic people, because we were autistic children at one point. Why are we measuring children's abilities by comparing them with the milestones invented by educated idiots? Why should a child be walking and talking by a certain age and parents feeling inadequate if their child is lagging behind in this socially constructed system built to grind you down? If the parents feel inadequate for this reason, then no doubt your child will feel it too. Autistic children do not miss a trick. They notice everything, every single change in vibe, tone of voice, facial expression. There are non-verbal autistic people out there who are thriving in life. Maybe they had a book published or reached their own personal milestone, which is an achievement, and is just as valid as learning to speak. Bringing us back onto the topic of miscommunications and late diagnosed autistic women, there are reasons why we are the way we are. If these adults had proper support they needed at school, then there wouldn't be so many traumatized autistic adults. Again, it's not the autism that is the problem. Intentions are really difficult to decipher, even if you feel like you can trust the other person. You want to, but after learning the hard way so many times, it takes some extra time. It is a big test to find out who sticks around and who loses all patience with us and abandons us with a very narrow-minded understanding of where we are coming from. Their loss. To be totally myself, I need to feel safe around people. If you see me happily hyperactive, moving freely, clicking my fingers, trying to remember what I'm doing, rubbing my hands, my legs, unable to keep still, then that is me feeling comfortable enough to be myself around you. These stims or techniques have enabled me to regulate my own emotions and transcend them in the moment, rather than feeling frozen and anxious, like a live wire about to explode. Movement is essential for keeping my heart from racing and for helping me cope in overwhelming situations. If I didn't move when I needed to, then it would result in an outburst later down the line. The adrenaline can reach heights of no return unless I allow my body to move in the way it needs to move. Having my diagnosis gave me permission to be myself for the first time in my life since I was a very small child. To know the reasons why I feel the way I do, the reasons why I struggle, has been life-saving for me. Now I can stop internalising the problems by blaming myself for things that have a simple solution, like dimming the lights, turning off the radio, or by simply putting on my headset to dampen down the sharp, painful noises around me. I can stop invalidating myself and learn to totally trust in my own way of navigating through life. I can manage my energy and use discernment in potential overwhelming situations by choosing if I should go based on the information given. I need to carefully plan things so that I don't ever risk having a meltdown in a public place, because the shame that comes from that is extremely detrimental, which makes me think about the YouTube videos that some parents exploit their children, and they put their child having a meltdown on, like, I don't know, Instagram or somewhere, anywhere, Facebook, and they like attention seeking. They like, please, can somebody help me know what's wrong with my child? They're your child. You learn to get to know them. Anyway, having all the information is necessary to make a balanced choice. Who will be there? How many people will be there? Where is there? Is the environment going to make me extremely tired because it's bright with flashing lights and lots of different noises? I tend to stay away from these environments. I will go along sometimes, but that's because I'm trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole again, because I feel lonely and anxious and think a few pints would really help sort this out, and so decide to take a hedonistic approach to a night out. Because that's what happens when you're in silence and you're unable to speak, unable to reach out. You know, my non-verbal moments are alone, safe in my flat. I don't like to share them with anyone, to be honest. Maybe that's why I'm on the oversharing. Maybe that's why my thumbs and my hands really hurt. Could have a break from my phone, I think. I don't like pubs, and the only way to handle being out is to be drunk, because that numbs my senses. But then I'm only postponing the inevitable meltdown burnout for a later date. So quick fixes really are quite counterproductive, unless I have a care plan in place for the next 4 days or so. This is the conditioned way my brain deals with life, and now I'm working really hard on getting some sort of routine in my life. Having life being slightly predictable keeps me calm. Knowing all the details of a plan, idea, favour, suggestion enables me to make a balanced choice. But if I don't have the information, the chances of me asking for it are quite slim. I've come off Facebook. My video might be on there, but that doesn't mean I'm on there. I'm definitely not on Facebook. It has caused me a lot of paranoia and bad mental health, scrolling like a zombie, unable to stop because my ADHD has just taken over any rational thinking, whilst waiting for a solution for my life to suddenly pop out of the phone. It never happens. It is a distraction and makes me feel even more alone. I feel more connected to people since I deleted my account. Main reason being that I found it hard to understand people's messages, as well as thinking how it was affecting my thought patterns and leading me to make bad choices without seeing any other opportunities, because Facebook was my reality. I'm so glad I'm free of the Book of a Thousand Faces. My mental health has improved vastly, and now I have a clear mind to write on matters which are really important to me. I had a physical reaction to any time somebody sent me a thumbs up emoji, especially if it was blue. In fact, Facebook has got a lot to answer to. It has caused a lot of division between people and a lot of unnecessary hurt and loss. I remember once my rejection issues were so bad that I didn't want to ask individual friends if they were free to go for a walk, in case they didn't reply because they were too busy. So I put a post up saying, anyone fancy a walk? If I ask hundreds of Facebook friends, then at least one would take me up on the offer, right? It was then I was taken advantage of by a person with bad intentions. That was a few years ago, and I'm wiser and less trusting now. I feel a lot safer alone these days, or with close friends who I know, love and trust. Bottom line is this. If teachers had better training in safeguarding and conditions and disabilities, then they could educate children in a much better way. If the children were better educated on this too, then there would be less bullying, no miscommunications, and all children would thrive as the unique individuals they were born to be. They may not suffer the burden of trauma and complex post-traumatic stress as adults, and they may not feel the need to justify, overshare, and over-explain themselves to people who might not have their best interests at heart. Children need to feel empowered, not dumbed down. And that's exactly what the system and the education system is doing, is dumbing them down. It makes me so angry sometimes, but anger is not good for you, so we'll give that up, yeah? Which brings me on to the literal mass squaring. This is ableist, as it causes autistic children a lot of fear and stress. If you rely on lip reading in a noisy, busy environment, it can cause severe anxiety to not be able to see the person's whole face. Trust is a huge factor in the way autistic children need to see the world, and it affects their ability to feel safe. If I can't see a whole face, I wonder if you're happy, sad, angry, although it's hard to read facial expressions and make facial expressions depending where you are and who you are surrounded by. Removing any further barrier would help an autistic child a great deal. There are deaf children who need to rely on lip reading also. There are many reasons a child needs to see your face. It could be fatal for a lost child who innocently trusts a masked stranger and walks closer towards them in hope that they can hear them better, only to risk being snatched. Children need to be able to trust certain adults, and you're eliminating that child's basic need by covering half of your face. So take off your masks, like simple. It's indoctrination and it's harmful. You might not think so, but if you look into the psychology of it, it's extremely harmful. Some questions to ask your teachers, head teachers, policy writers, education governors, and your government. Why the ridiculous amount of propaganda to aid trans children when these autistic children have been slipping through the net for years? Where are the lessons on different conditions and different disabilities? Where is the training evidence for teachers to spot signs of undiagnosed autism? Where can girls go to gain knowledge and have their basic needs met at school? There is a reason why late diagnosed autistic women have trouble with communication. You would never believe it really, because here I am delivering to you this information based on very personal experiences in a way that is hopefully understood. Sorry, hang on. I am very grateful that the last misunderstanding has empowered me to do this and that I haven't suffered a loss of any kind during the process of trying to understand myself. This is extremely worrying, as there are a high number of autistic girls who have had gender dysphoria, me being one of them. Autistic children copy behaviour more so than neurotypical children. So if they were going through a phase, there is a high possibility that autistic children may think they need to change their sex. There is an abundance of encouragement and support for that. Coercion, I call it, an agenda on girls' and women's rights. I'm not saying trans children should not receive help and support. Every child should. I'm asking you, why are there millions of adults unable to maintain relationships, hold down jobs, on drugs, addicted to one thing or another, finding difficulty in trusting, needing solid proof before deciding on a venture, idea, plan, but too fearful to ask for details, doubting themselves continuously, feeling like they are being gaslit because they have never identified why they feel so worthless. Why, excuse me, why are the government not spending millions of pounds on fixing this? Instead, they are busy painting rainbows on roads and police cars to appear like they're trans heroes. But they are not. They don't care about your individual needs. All they care about is the agenda. It has caused more division and therefore more discrimination and violence. Assaults in schools have risen and children do not know who to trust or trust the opinions of adults in their lives. Even my nursery nurse 3-year diploma didn't even touch the surface of what signs to look for in possible child abuse. As a student in my nursery placement, I was not trained in spotting the signs, and as an adult, in retrospect, I can see the signs, but 28 years later, it's too late. The teacher and the nursery nurse did not spot the signs either. That child's father went to jail for paedophilia, 17 years, not enough time, and the damage has already been done. If all these gender labels were thrown around in class when I was in school, I may very well be a regretful man sitting here now. Oh. What I can't understand is that if gender fluid is an actual real label, then that is the proof in the pudding right there that children can get confused and change their mind. There are children who have been abused, who hate their bodies, who could get confused and think, why not be the opposite sex, being as the help and the encouragement is there so easily to access, even if you don't want it. The help and support for body reassignment is there for young children, and they don't even need to tell their parents. The government wants to own your children and take away your parental rights. That's the bottom line. There are autistic girls waiting on a list to have their breasts removed. I'd have joined the queue at school because the boys said I wasn't allowed to play football with them anymore because I had tits. It was very hurtful at the time, you know. I just didn't like them. I was like, oh my God, why are they here? It's not because I'm a man, really. It's because of confusion and being autistic and being gay and having no sort of like support for that as well, you know. And, you know, we don't need things bombarded onto us. We just need good role models, that's all, and no shame. Anyway, autistic children are constantly trying to find their place in society and are easily led, coerced and manipulated. If gender fluid is an actual thing, then why are all the other labels not scrapped? Because isn't that evidence that children are likely to change their mind as they grow? Because their brains don't fully develop until in their 20s? Being a late diagnosed autistic adult who is currently learning to love herself and make sense of her whole life is still trying to find her place in the world. Society is an unsafe place. At the start of this pandemic, sorry, Freudian slip, I'd see a sign on a door of a shop saying masks must be worn or no entry. I immediately thought that I was not welcome there, and I walked away, feeling forever lost and confused with extreme anxiety. If a 41-year-old mature woman feels like that, and has only just learned to speak up for herself in some ways to some people, then how do you think a small child is feeling every day surrounded by masked people? I've worn a mask my whole life as a survival technique because I learned it was not okay to be myself. How do children even stand a chance in discovering who they are when the indoctrination has us all blinded? I know myself well now. There is still so much to learn, and I'm learning to trust in my own intuition. I still make mistakes. People still give up on me because they cannot see the root of the trauma. They cannot see autism. Most people don't even know what it is. I know my strengths and weaknesses, my triggers, my insecurities, and what I do not want in life. I have a habit of morphing into the person I think I'm needed to be but most of it is pure guesswork. I have retreated inside of myself in deep shame because I failed at a social endeavour. Autism is not the problem. The system is. I respect truth, no matter how hurtful it may be to the ego in that moment. All I'm interested in is harmony on earth. Even after a diagnosis, I still doubt myself. But at least I have some sort of navigation skills now in order to stay safe and keep evolving. Support from the intricated autism services for when I need it. I have fought for this support, and it's not been easy. Going your whole adult life without the truth is damaging. But I've learned a lot, and now I can transmute my painful experiences into tools to help others. There is no more shame, and that is because I have beautiful, caring, gentle mirrors around me who reflect my qualities, and for that I'm forever grateful. I've looked at my uncomfortable shadow self and accepted all parts of myself, so good luck to anyone who tries to put me down, gaslight me, trigger me, because it will just push me far away from you. Thank you to all the people who see through my struggles and still love me. It's because of these people I have motivation to push forward in life. I see some people as lighthouses. So instead of being a lost ship at sea, I will try to be a lighthouse too. I think that's it. Okay, I'll probably have more to add, but that's the gist, and that's what I really needed to get out. Is healing me and it's helping other people, hopefully parents, teachers, autistic people. Yeah, and I hopefully speak to you soon. Take care.